We all know the answer to this question. Who are you going to call? Well, who are you going to call? Well, when the question is about ghosts, most of us are going to call a bunch of guys with proton packs sitting on their back. But what are we calling to see? We're not calling to get rid of that ghost. We're calling because we want to see that 1959 Cadillac commercial chassis built by Miller Meteor Corporation. Yes. We're talking about Ecto-1, one of the original car cult movie vehicles that most of us remember from our childhood. If you didn't see it in the movies, you saw it in the cartoon. And hell, if you didn't watch it in either one of those, then you've seen it somewhere else. Because Ecto-1 is one of those big automotive icons from around the world. Ghostbusters is the movie, but Ecto-1 is the car. And being that we like cars, that is what the Autolux podcast is talking about today. Welcome back to the Autolux podcast. I am your host, as always, the doctor to the automotive industry, Mr. Everett J, coming to you from our main website at Autolux.net. If you haven't been there, stop by, check it out, and see some of the great things that the Autolux.net website has to offer. From a calendar of great automotive moments to children's books, our ratings from around the world, over 500 companies every year, and corporate links websites to every major automotive corporation and some of their technology companies from around the globe on our corporate links website page. And if you're an educator or a parent looking to teach your kids more about the automotive industry, check out our website and check out some of our children's books and the help pages where you can find information to help your class with that next project or help your kids learn a little bit more about the products you own on the Autolux.net website. The Autolux podcast is brought to you by Ecom Entertainment Media Group and hosted by the one and only Everett J. So like I said in the intro, we're talking about that most famous Cadillac of all time. No, not Elvis's pink Cadillac. One a little more famous than that. Ecto-1. We all know who Ecto-1 is. The Ghostbuster car. Yeah, that amazing 1959 Cadillac commercial chassis built by Miller Meteor Corporation. Built off the Miller Meteor Sentinel model. It was a product that actually was available way back days. Miller Meteor built different variations of them. They built both ambulance and Hearst editions, but the one we're talking about is the one built for the ambulance edition. Miller Meteor was an amazing company. They built vehicles from 1931 all the way up to 1979, which is kind of interesting because 1979, when did Ghostbusters come out? 1980? Think about it. These cars were done in the marketplace by the time the movie came out. So this Miller Meteor Cadillac ambulance model was cheap and easy to get. Built off of the Series 75 Cadillac, they also had limo counterparts as well. The Series 75 Cadillac sedan stretched out to create the ambulance model. No, Cadillac didn't build them from their own production lines. The vehicle in question for Ecto-1 was actually built by a coach build company. They went out of production in 1979 due to new regulations for emergency vehicles. If we all remember, that's when dedicated van ambulances started coming in, just before we got into those box ones in North America by the late 80s. A new height and width requirements moved away from wagons and into more van layouts. The original design was to be black and finished with white with purple strobe lights. That is what Dan Aykroyd originally envisioned for Ecto-1 for the Ghostbuster car. He didn't originally envision a Cadillac convertible, but he did envision a black and flashing white with purple strobe light car. Kind of interesting, but unfortunately you won't see it in the dark scenes very well. This was changed to blue and white due to the night scenes, then again changed just before filming began to just a plain white. Found by Dr. Ray Stantz for $4,800 American, nearly $13,000 today. This was expensive. You gotta think about it. $4,800, 1984 for this product? That's expensive. An average person was paying that to get a decent vehicle. Hell, this was the day and age where you could buy like those $200 fix-up classic vehicles and boot around in them for a while. Ugh. But again, the Ghostbusters needed a car. This was the car for the original movie. And being found by Ray Stantz, this was just after he got all of this money by remortgaging his mother's house upstate. He utilized that to get the money for the firehouse and Ecto-1. A multitude of repairs like his brakes, brake pads, rings, electrical. You know, he had so much to fix on this car. And just the look on Bill Murray's face when Dan Aykroyd's character says it to him, he tells him all the broken stuff in it, and he's like, well, how much you pay? Oh, just $4,800. And he's like, whoa. Like, situation. This is crazy. You didn't spend $4,800 on a beat up old ambulance, and I now have to tear completely apart and rebuild. The original car was black and gray when he found it, and Ray repairs this in the firehouse. Now, the funny thing is the movie studio paid the person who they borrowed the car from to paint it for this scene. Now, Ray repairs this car in the firehouse, which is kind of a funny scene, because if you've ever seen the movie The Mask, the repair shop that Jim Carrey's character goes into to pick up his car before he goes to the date at the Copacabana is the same set used for Ghostbusters. He goes inside the same firehouse to pick up his car from the garage. The same place where Ray Stantz is tearing apart this ambulance. It's just, if you didn't pay attention to the movies, like, this is something I realized when I was a kid first watching this movie. Like, hey, that is familiar. One of those little weird Easter egg things where they utilize things, you know, the same backgrounds. Kind of like how Gremlins, the town scene in Gremlins is the exact same town used in Back to the Future. Utilization of pre-existing products. It's a great thing. So he repairs this in the main fire hall, and he has enough for this because they're just starting to move into this main hall. It's an old fire station, so it would have been big enough for fire trucks to tear it apart. Now, the reason why he got the ambulance is because it has enough room for all of their gear, the proton packs, the goggles, the PKA meters, traps, and anything else they need to carry with them on all their adventures. It was painted white with red and displaying a ghost logo, sirens, and the vanity plate Ecto-1, because if you want to make an appearance somewhere, especially if you're hunting ghosts, you want people to recognize your vehicle. That's why they have the ghost logo painted on the side. And two, a vanity plate just makes it so easy for you to remember the name of the car. The ambulance lights were updated with CB antennas and a hood-mounted searchlight. And if you didn't realize it, the proton packs were actually put onto the original gurney that rolled out of the back of the ambulance. It's one of those key features that you really don't pay attention, and a lot of people miss while they're watching the movie. And yeah, Ray Stantz rebuilt and did all this stuff to this amazing beat-up car he paid $4,800 for, and God knows how much he spent fixing it, to utilize stuff inside the vehicle to move their products. Like using the gurney to move it. It's amazing. The roof rack contains a lot of interesting things. If you didn't know it, it contains muon scrubbers, radio GPS locator, high-intensity microphones, and an EMF scrubber to help with location, chasing, and detection of all ghostly figures within the environment that's around it. Seen in action during the growth video with Casey Kasem really is one of the first main points you see Ecto-1. The first time you really see it after it's been completely rebuilt is when they get their first call. And Annie Potts says, "We got one!" And they hop in the car, the firehouse door opens, and you read Ecto-1 and see the front of that 59 Cadillac peering at you in the face. We get it. They show the vehicle going up, and there's not a whole heck of a lot else after that. You gotta remember, this movie is about the Ghostbusters. It's not about the car. So why the hell would we do a podcast about the car, not the movie? Because the movie's more about them, and the car is just an added feature to it. Well, the car is a part of car culture. And if you watch the scene where they're like growing after their first job, they do the little grow scene, the little montage with Casey Kasem talking in the background about all these things. And that's when you actually get to see more of the car going around the city, putting the traps and opening the doors. And it's amazing. It's Ecto-1. The only other time you really see it is a talk between Ray and Winston about the reckoning. The funniest thing with this scene is this actual scene is how they picked their character to be Winston. Kind of interesting. You're sitting here watching Ray and Winston talk to each other inside the car about the reckoning, where that was actually used by Dan Aykroyd to interview for that position in the movie. Unfortunately, you don't get to see much more than just the dash of the car and the fact that Winston is usually the driver of the vehicle, even seeing during the end battle scene and into the second movie. Winston is the man who drives the car. The end battle scene, you kind of see a little bit more of the car. You get to see the gurney bit as they drag it out to get the proton packs, and a little bit more around it. It's, you know, a little bit of a focus, plus the drive-up scene to it. It's kind of neat. You hear it, you see it, the lights are going. It's a Cadillac. It's an ambulance. It's Ecto-1. Then, Ghostbusters ends. We wait a few years for Ghostbusters 2 to come out. The very beginning of this movie begins with Ray and Winston, yet again, doing a birthday party. The funniest thing with this is that the car appears that it needs work because it's backfiring, it's got black smoke, and it's beat up. This thing is dying. The car has been, the past 5 years. It's 1989 from the original 1984. The past 5 years, this car has just gone through hell and back, and here we are. They're being whittled down to doing kids parties. Ghostbusters really isn't doing good. Ray owns a bookstore, and Bill Murray's character is, doing a talk show. They all have different jobs. But the funny thing about this scene is the backfiring and the black smoke coming out of the car was actually not special effects. The actual vehicle used in that scene truly was in disrepair from being stored for 5 years on the movie lot. The original Ecto-1 used from the first movie and used in this scene actually died on the Brooklyn Bridge during the filming of the second movie. The studio was actually fined for blocking traffic due to the fact that there's no emergency lanes on the Brooklyn Bridge, but they were fined, and that car literally had to be picked up and dragged out of there. The original Ecto-1 died. It now literally sits on a lot, rotting. He got his stance and moved on to new jobs with Ray owning his bookstore, like we said, and Ecto-1 becomes Ecto-1A after they return to business. The new car contains a new digital display screen on each side, something big and new for 1989, and a new Ghostbusters logo can be viewed on the side. The car is really not highly used in the second movie when you think about it. Like, even their end scene, like the battle with the picture, their car's not there because they get there by walking in the Statue of Liberty. Because this is also followed up by a great scene with Cheech Moranis where he tells them, the portmaster, to tell him the Titanic has finally arrived. Sorry, but that's one of my most memorable moments of that, and one of my first introductions to Cheech on top of Oliver and Company. If you haven't listened to it, Cheech and Chong, Lowrider Culture, Autolux top-rated podcast, check it out. It's a funny one. It's all about going up in green smoke. But like we said, it really wasn't used a lot in the movie. You see the black smoke at the beginning, there's a few other small scenes, but not a lot. It's Ecto-1, it's a car, like, as kids, we all wanted it. And with the cartoon, The Real Ghostbusters in it, they had the car, they had the toy. We all wanted it. And with it, Ecto-1 just disappears. After the end of the second movie, Ecto-1 essentially goes into hiding. They go to the Universal Studios lot and just sits there. It is utilized, not the actual car, a replica is actually utilized at Universal Studios during their parade walks. There are lots of replicas out there that are made by other people, but the car was never used. And a lot of us have demanded that, we need to see more of this car. Well, there was a re-release with the female Ghostbuster iteration of it, where they bring back the Cadillac Appeal, but this time, it's the Hearst style of the Fleetwood Brom Ecto-1 from 1984, and it's pink instead of red because girl movie. This, if you've seen the movie and you actually paid attention to it, I'm sorry, Melissa McCarthy, and everybody else in the movie, I'm not a fan of that Ghostbuster movie. It's a little darker. The CG is way better, and it's got some funny moments in it, but it's still not Ghostbuster-ish enough. I'm sorry. It's more of a chit-chat, talking, and whatever else. So really, that Ecto-1 was not very reminiscent. And even to this day, not a lot of people really care about that one. Then comes the release of the trailer for the new Ghostbuster movie. Ghostbusters 3 have been talked about for years. I remember in the 90s, like around 93, 94, my brother first started talking to me about it, about how Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray had worked on the script for Ghostbusters 3, and we're talking about it, and they were considering breaking it up into 2 different movies because the script was so long, and it just never happened. Dan Aykroyd was doing so much stuff, Bill Murray was doing so much stuff, like everybody was so into different things, and then all of a sudden we hear about the original director's son making a new Ghostbuster movie. Well, this really pissed off, a couple of the people from the all-girl iteration of Ghostbusters, like, oh, you gotta bring it back because you didn't like us, oh, blah, 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 crap. People just bitching about nothing, because really, you guys did a remake. This guy wants to expand upon the original. And the first ad we see for it is a barn for Ghostbusters Afterlife. And in the barn, tarp blows away from Ecto-1. We know, oh my god, Ecto-1. There's going to be more Ecto-1 in this third movie. Oh my god, I can't believe this. It's Ghostbusters, it's Ecto-1. Everybody has been asking to see more of this car. It's like the Jurassic Park Explorer, Starsky and Hutch Ford Gran Torino, or the DeLorean from Back to the Future. It is a part of car culture, and we want to see this thing in action. We've never seen it in action. Well, as the story goes, knows later on, when the movie finally comes out, is that Egon stole the car and moved it to Somerville, Oklahoma, which was actually, that part of the movie was filmed in Canada. We'll get to that a little bit later. The car was parked in the barn and left die after Egon had passed away. It was fixed and put back into action after he passes away in the movie story, and his daughter and her kids move into the house. His grandson finds the car and fixes it up. But Egon has made some altercations to the vehicle. The new car now has a remote control trap that comes out of a drop-down door. Also has a gunner seat in it too. Egon, knowing that if something else happened, this vehicle needs to be more usable. It can't just be for us to get our Proton packs out of. We got to use this thing as an actual fight vehicle. Now in this movie, it hasn't been repainted. But why? Well, because in the movie, he just fixes it up. He can't repaint it. During this movie, unlike the original movie, the car was actually found by a search. It was actually a replica, or not a replica, but an actual classic car that had been rebuilt by a client. And they asked to use the car for the movie. They never told them they were going to paint it, but keeping with it, they repainted it for them. So the original car was given back. But by the time the second movie had come out, they managed to purchase this vehicle off the original owner. So in the first two movies, there was only 2 cars ever used because the original Ecto-1 died on the bridge. Ecto-1A was its replacement. For the third movie, 3 new cars were used in this film because now they had to have an action scene with this car. Sony kept the original 1A in storage only to be used as a reference for these new cars. The new cars had a Ford Mustang axles, GM LS3 engines with 500 horsepower, and were completely built by scratch using the movie for reference. And this was all to be done in 3 months. 3 months to build these cars from scratch. There's no going out to buy a brand new Miller Meteor ambulance Cadillac because there's not a lot of them kicking around now. We're talking like 40 years later. They upgraded the axles due to the high stress of the car during the chase scenes. The chase scene was the highlight of the movie, paving way for Ecto-1 to have a bigger part in this movie. And the chase scenes were actually filmed in the town of Fort Macleod, Alberta, which is in Canada if you didn't know our provinces, but Fort Macleod, Alberta, with other parts of this film being filmed in that same province. At the end of the movie, we don't see this, but at the end of the movie, after this great chase scene with Ecto-1, we finally get to see all of the gunner seats and the power of this thing. You gotta remember, it was a 1959 Cadillac. They had power back then. This thing would have been a beast. And in keeping with it, they put a GM LS3 engine in it. Sure, they upgraded it with Mustang parts too, but like, come on, you gotta make this thing beefy and be able to handle the stress you're putting through it. At the end of the third movie, Winston takes Ecto-1 to bring it back and restore it, after which he returns the car to the Firehouse. With the Firehouse movie now on its way, Ecto-1 is coming back, and is coming back as we originally remembered it. Ecto-1 is here to stay. Now, Ecto-1 has had many different variations past the movie. He entered into the 3D world with the release of the Ghostbusters game. If you haven't played this, it is an amazing game. Follows the Ghostbuster theory so well. It has been introduced into the world of famous vehicles, with many replicas being built. It is utilized at Universal Studios Park, as we said, and released by Hot Wheels, Jada Toys, Kenner, Hasbro, Ertl, Playmobil, and even Lego versions have been made of this vehicle. My son actually has the Playmobil version of it, with Playmobil and their Ghostbuster Playmobil sets and the Ecto-1 being one of the top performers with the movie cars, next to the DeLorean for the Playmobil Ring and its main product stable. Before this, Ertl was the only other Ecto-1 that people really saw a lot of. Well, I should say Jada Toys from way back in the days when we were kids. Like, those original ones are worth quite a bit now. The Playmobil 1 is one of the biggest comeback vehicles, and it helps Spawn more because it brought out Back to the Future DeLorean, KITT, the A-Team van, and now the James Bond Aston Martin. The Ectomobile was actually used in the song Cleaning Up the Town from the film's soundtrack. If you watch the music video, you'll actually see it. There have been 3 vehicles within the first 2 movies which played the car. The first one was leased from a collector for the first Ecto-1 scene, the painted one. The second one died while filming the second movie. And the third one is the last one that has been kept, and only kept as a reference vehicle. Ecto-1 has had many different names. There's Ecto-1, number 1, Ecto-1A, Ecto-1 1984 Cadillac, Ghostbusters 2016 film. You know, it was destroyed in the film, thank God. Ecto-1B, the Ghostbusters, the video game, the Electron or Cybertron, what can morph. The Ecto-2, the auto gyro seen in the cartoon. The Ecto-3, the motorized unicycle with a sidecar in the cartoon. It has a time distortion jet from the comic deck, and is also a cart for the toys. The Ecto Bomber airplane from Kenner Toys, the Extreme Ecto 1 from the Extreme Ghostbusters TV series from Japan, the Ecto Ishii, a 6-wheeled vehicle from their job in Tokyo during the real Ghostbusters, the Ecto 8, the tugboat from the 2009 video game, and the Ecto 1 Lego from the Lego Dimensions video game. Today, the Ecto 1 rides along with the DeLorean, the General Lee, and the Jurassic Park Explorer as a memorable automotive vehicle from movies. It is something that we all remember. We all can place ourselves the first time we ever saw it. First time I ever saw it, I was 3 years old. My brother was watching the movie, and when those firehouse doors opened up, and I saw Ecto 1, like just the license plate, I'm like, what's that? And I saw it, I'm like, oh, I don't like wagons, but that is awesome. It might have helped spawn my fascination with wagons and the fact that my little pocket rocket is essentially a shooting brake wagon vehicle. But in all reality, Ecto 1 is a part of all of us. Even though the original 2 movies barely showed any of Ecto 1, it still became a big part of automotive movie cult history. Now, how does a vehicle that barely even gets shown become a big part? Well, how about the Dodge Intrepid concept from Wraith? Smuggling and Bandit's kind of easy to see because you see it right there. There are movies that have specific vehicles in them that kind of take precedence over others. You really don't think about it, but there are some amazing vehicles out there that come into play. Demolition Man wasn't a big movie for cars, and yet it had 2 famous vehicles in it. We all remember the Cutlass 442. Anybody remembers that car? Just balls deep, American horsepower. The other one was a GM concept car from the 90s, and it was built out of Kevlar to see how much weight they could save on a production vehicle. It was actually a concept, and it was supposed to be made of electric. Movies can really help bring cars out of their shells. And with the DeLorean being in Back to the Future, some of them can even push companies to bring back those famous cars. Today, Ecto 1 lives on again. And with the release of the Firehouse movie coming out, we are glad to see that Ecto 1 is living a new life. And with that, we finally get to see that car in action. So here's to you, Ghostbusters. We know who we're going to call. We're going to call you. Just so we can hear those sirens roll up to catch the ghost in our house. So if you like this podcast, please like, share, or comment about it on any of the major social feeds or streaming services that you follow us on. Just follow us, find out. We release a new episode every single week. It's great. We follow so much into the industry. If you like some of the history ones, go back, check out some of our history backstops. We have quite a few great, amazing episodes. And on top of that, check out the website. Go there, see some of the images we've been talking about. We have pictures of all the toys and everything else from this podcast, all inclusive on the Ecto 1 podcast page on the Autolux.net website. And while there, stop by, check out some of the Corporate Links websites, and naturally some of the rated vehicles from myself, the Doctor of the Automotive Industry, Mr. Everett J. Read some of the articles. They are pretty good and pretty funny if you like them. The Autolux podcast has been brought to you by Ecom Entertainment Group and hosted by the one and only Mr. Everett J. So sit back, strap yourself in for this one fun, amazing ride that Ecto 1 is still taking us on to this day. Thank you.